I'm 27 now, but I can't say I've had an easy ride growing up. My mom passed away when I was 7. It was sudden, a car accident that left me reeling. For a while, it was just me and Dad, figuring things out together. He worked long hours, but he tried his best. Then, 2 years later, he remarried a woman named Lisa. At first, she seemed like a dream, friendly, affectionate, and eager to make a good impression. She'd bake cookies and invite my friends over, always smiling like she'd stepped out of a Hallmark movie. But that didn't last long. Lisa had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Emma, who was 12, and Josh, who was 10. Suddenly, our house didn't feel like home anymore. I went from being the center of my dad's world to feeling like an unwanted guest in my own family. Lisa's kids had everything: new clothes, the latest toys, even private lessons for their hobbies. Meanwhile, I was stuck wearing hand-me-downs and making do with what I had. I didn't understand why at first. I figured maybe money was tight, but Dad had a good job and our house wasn't exactly modest. Then it hit me: Lisa didn't see me as part of her real family. Any money spent on me was spoiling me, while her kids deserved the best because they were special. She made that clear in little ways, like when I needed new sneakers for school, and she called me ungrateful for not appreciating my old ones, which had holes in the soles. Meanwhile, Josh got a brand new pair of Nikes the same week. Dad never stepped in. If anything, he seemed scared to rock the boat. Whenever I tried to bring up how unfair things felt, he'd tell me to give Lisa some time or not make things harder than they need to be. He'd pat me on the shoulder, tell me he loved me, and then go back to whatever he was doing. Lisa had him wrapped around her finger. Things got worse when she started humiliating me in front of others. One time, she found out I'd failed a math test. Instead of talking to me about it privately, she made a huge scene during dinner with her family friends present, saying, "See, this is why you'll never succeed. You don't put in the effort." I wanted to disappear. That wasn't the only time. If I messed up in any way, Lisa made sure everyone knew about it. Lisa also had this habit of keeping my dad busy with her kids' lives. If Emma had a dance recital or Josh had a soccer game, Dad was there, cheering from the front row. But when I had a school play or a baseball game, there was always an excuse: work ran late, Lisa needed help. Something always came up. I stopped inviting him after a while. What was the point? When I turned 18, I packed my bags and left for college, cutting off contact as much as I could. I called Dad occasionally, but I never visited. Lisa made sure I felt like an outsider in that house, so I didn't see the point in going back. Dad tried to patch things up here and there, but he never apologized for letting Lisa treat me the way she did. He'd just say Lisa's trying her best, as if that excused anything. 3 years ago, Dad passed away suddenly. A heart attack. I was devastated, but part of me was also angry that he never stood up for me, that he let Lisa run the show. After his death, Lisa tried to contest his will. Dad left me everything: the house, his savings, and his shares in the company he worked for. Lisa wasn't happy about that. She claimed she was entitled to her fair share and dragged me into a nasty legal battle. I won, but by the end of it, I was done. I blocked Lisa on everything and made it clear to my extended family that I wanted nothing to do with her. I started therapy to unpack everything that had happened and focused on building my own life. Then, a week ago, out of nowhere, she emailed me. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" She wrote this long, rambling message about how she regrets how she treated me, how she was under a lot of stress raising 3 kids, and how she wants to make amends. She even mentioned how proud my dad would be of the man I've become. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to ignore her and move on. Another part of me feels guilty, like maybe I should at least hear her out. But then I remember the years of neglect, the favoritism, the constant feeling that I didn't belong in my own family. And I wonder if she's really sorry or just looking for something. Money, maybe? I decided to post here to get some advice. Should I give Lisa a chance to explain herself, or should I let her stay in the past where she belongs? Update 1. After sitting on Lisa's email for a few days, I decided to reply. I kept it short and cautious, asking her why she was reaching out after all these years. I didn't expect much, but I wanted to see if her sudden interest in making amends was genuine or if there was more to it. She wrote back almost immediately. Her response was long, several paragraphs of her explaining how hard things had been for her when we were growing up. She claimed she was under a lot of stress, raising 3 kids, managing a household, and trying to support my dad. She said she regretted the way she treated me and hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive her. At first glance, it sounded sincere. But then, toward the end of her email, she mentioned that she'd fallen on hard times recently. She didn't outright ask for help, but it felt like she was hinting at it. That's when my guard went up. It's hard to ignore the timing. Years of silence. And now, when she's struggling, she suddenly wants to reconnect. I talked to my cousin about the email. We're pretty close, and she's always been in my corner when it comes to Lisa. She wasn't surprised. Apparently, Lisa has been making the rounds, asking various family members for loans. She hadn't come to me yet, but it seemed like only a matter of time. My cousin said Lisa even tried to guilt trip one relative by saying she needed the money to keep her house. The family gossip didn't stop there. Another relative mentioned how Lisa had a history of overspending and was rumored to have racked up credit card debt. Some family members think I should give her a chance, saying she's been humbled by her struggles. Others told me to stay far away, knowing how manipulative she can be. While all this was swirling around, I couldn't stop thinking about one particular memory from my childhood. After my mom passed, we kept a box of her belongings, things like her jewelry, letters, and family photos. When Lisa moved in, she decided the box didn't fit her vision for the house. One day, I came home from school, and it was gone. She'd thrown it out. My dad tried to downplay it, saying Lisa didn't realize how much it meant to me, but I knew better. That box was the last tangible connection I had to my mom, and she got rid of it like it was trash. That memory hit me hard as I read Lisa's email again. Could someone who could do something like that really change? I wasn't sure. I updated my original post on Reddit, sharing her email and asking if I should give her a chance. The responses were overwhelming. Most people told me to trust my gut and be wary of her motives. A few pointed out inconsistencies in her story, like how she claimed to regret her actions but also downplayed them as the result of stress. If she was so sorry, why hadn't she reached out before she needed help? A couple of days later, Lisa sent another email. This time, she admitted she was struggling financially and asked if I could help. She framed it as a way to prove I'd moved on and wasn't holding a grudge. That confirmed it for me. Her apology wasn't about making things right. It was about getting something from me. I brought this up in therapy, where my therapist reminded me that forgiveness doesn't mean I have to let someone back into my life. She encouraged me to set boundaries and only engage if I felt it was in my best interest. So, I decided to test Lisa's sincerity. I wrote back and told her I'd consider forgiving her if she acknowledged specific instances of how she hurt me, like throwing away my mom's belongings and favoring her kids over me. Her response wasn't what I hoped for. Instead of taking accountability, she minimized everything. She said I was exaggerating and that I was too young to remember things accurately. She even tried to spin the story about my mom's belongings, claiming she thought my dad had approved getting rid of them. That was the last straw for me. The final nail in the coffin came from my uncle. He told me Lisa's financial problems weren't just due to overspending, they were tied to gambling debts. She'd been using money to feed a habit and was now desperate to dig herself out of the hole. That explained a lot, including why she was so focused on trying to reconnect with me. I updated Reddit again, sharing everything that had unfolded. The response was massive. People were furious on my behalf, telling me to prioritize my own well-being and cut her off for good. Some even shared similar stories about manipulative family members, which made me feel less alone in all this. For now, I've decided to keep my distance. Lisa's emails have stopped, at least for the moment, but I'm bracing for whatever she might try next. One thing's for sure, I'm not letting her guilt or manipulate me into giving her what she wants. This time, I'm putting myself first. Update 2. After Lisa's last email and the revelations about her gambling debts, I thought about just blocking her and moving on. But something kept gnawing at me. There were things I needed to say, not just for her to hear, but for myself. So, I decided to confront her directly. I called her, which was the first time we'd spoken in years. She picked up almost immediately, like she'd been waiting for me to reach out. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. I told her I needed her to explain why she had treated me the way she did growing up, why she made me feel like an outsider in my own home. There was a long silence before she responded. Lisa started crying. She said that when she married my dad, she had been intimidated by me because I reminded her so much of my mom. She said she felt like she could never live up to the memory of someone who was loved so deeply. That's why, according to her, she acted the way she did. She admitted to favoring her own kids, but insisted it wasn't intentional. It was just easier for her to connect with them. While I appreciated that she admitted to some of her actions, she danced around a lot of the bigger issues. She didn't bring up the inheritance battle or how she tried to take what my dad had left me. When I pressed her on it, she deflected, saying she thought she was entitled to a share as his wife, and that it wasn't personal. I made it clear to Lisa that while I was open to hearing her out, I couldn't overlook the damage she'd caused. I told her that trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight, especially when she's asking for help, while still avoiding full accountability. Lisa's tone shifted. She said that if I really wanted to move on, helping her financially would be the ultimate proof. She framed it as me letting go of the past and being the bigger person. That was it for me. I told her I wasn't going to give her any money, and that any chance of rebuilding a relationship would have to start with her taking full responsibility for her actions, not just the part she was comfortable admitting. She didn't argue, but I could tell she was angry. We ended the call on a tense note. Not even a day later, I started getting texts and calls from extended family. Lisa had gone to them, telling everyone I was unforgiving and refusing to help her when she was in need. Some relatives took her side, saying I should let bygones be bygones, while others backed me up, knowing how she had treated me. One cousin even shared screenshots of texts Lisa had sent, trying to manipulate them into pressuring me. In those messages, she claimed I was bitter and holding a grudge, conveniently leaving out the part where she had been abusive for most of my childhood. I updated Reddit about the phone call and the family drama, and the support was overwhelming. Many people shared their own stories of dealing with manipulative family members, which helped me feel less alone. A few pointed out that Lisa's attempt to frame my refusal as proof of bitterness was just another way of shifting blame onto me. My therapist also helped me unpack everything. She reminded me that I don't owe Lisa anything, not my time, not my forgiveness, and definitely not my money. She encouraged me to focus on my own healing and let go of any guilt Lisa was trying to impose. As I reflected on everything, I couldn't help but think about my dad. He was always so passive, always trying to avoid conflict. It was easier for him to go along with Lisa than to stand up for me. While I understand now that he might have felt trapped in his own way, it doesn't erase the pain of being let down by him, too. A few days later, Lisa made one last attempt to reach me. She sent a handwritten letter, which was unusual for her. In it, she apologized again, but also slipped in a few lines about how I was holding on to anger and making it harder for both of us to move forward. It felt like another way to shift responsibility onto me. She also mentioned her financial struggles again, though this time more subtly, almost as if she was testing to see if I'd cave. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her on every platform and told my family that I was done engaging with her. Some of them understood, while others still tried to guilt trip me. But for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend my decision. I updated Reddit again to share how things had played out. The response was incredible. People cheered me on for standing my ground and reminded me that setting boundaries is one of the healthiest things I could do. Some even shared how my story had inspired them to confront toxic family members in their own lives. For now, I feel at peace with my decision. Lisa's attempts to reconnect were never about genuine remorse. They were about what she could gain from me. I've decided to focus on building the life I want, free from her manipulations. Reddit has been an amazing support system, and I'm grateful for everyone who has helped me navigate this mess. Update 3. After cutting contact with Lisa, I focused on moving forward. Part of that included sorting through some old boxes I'd been avoiding since my dad passed. One box in particular stood out. It was filled with papers, photos, and personal belongings from my dad's office. I hadn't touched it in years, mostly because it felt too heavy to deal with. but now it felt like the right time. As I sifted through the contents, I came across a bundle of letters tied together with a faded ribbon. They were addressed to Lisa, dated around the time they got engaged. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started reading. At first, they seemed like the typical kind of letters you'd expect, sweet, romantic, and full of hope for the future. But the more I read, the more I noticed something unsettling. In one letter, my dad mentioned how much Lisa had insisted on moving in together quickly, emphasizing how it would be better for the kids and how it would give them all stability. He wrote about wanting to make her happy but also hinted at feeling rushed. In another, he mentioned how Lisa kept bringing up financial security and her desire to give her kids opportunities they hadn't had before. The letters painted a picture of someone who was more focused on securing a future for herself and her children than on the relationship itself. Then I found one that stopped me cold. It was a draft of a letter my dad had written but never sent. In it, he admitted he felt conflicted about their marriage. He wrote about how Lisa's behavior toward me had started to bother him, but he didn't know how to address it without causing a fight. He mentioned feeling trapped, like if he stood up to her, he'd lose the family he was trying to build. He also wrote that he regretted not being there for me more, acknowledging that he had failed me as a father. Reading those words broke something in me. I'd spent so many years feeling angry at my dad for not protecting me, but seeing his own guilt and regret made it harder to hold on to that anger. At the same time, it added another layer to my frustration with Lisa. She had manipulated him, and he'd let her, but it was clear he'd been struggling with his own demons the whole time. I shared parts of the letters with my cousin, who has been my sounding board throughout this entire ordeal. She was horrified but not surprised. She suggested I post some snippets on Reddit, both to process what I'd found and to see what others thought. So I did. The response was overwhelming. People validated what I was feeling, pointing out that the letters confirmed Lisa's manipulative nature and my dad's internal struggle. Some even suggested sharing the letters with the rest of the family to expose Lisa's true character. Not everyone agreed, though. One relative warned me against stirring up more drama, saying it would only make things worse. But before I could decide what to do, word about the letters somehow got back to Lisa. I don't know how, maybe a family member leaked it, but she emailed me again, furious. She accused me of trying to ruin her reputation and warned me not to share the letters publicly. Her tone was threatening but vague, implying there would be consequences if I didn't let it go. The thing is, she doesn't have a leg to stand on legally. These are my dad's personal belongings, and I have every right to share them if I choose. Still, her reaction confirmed what I already suspected. She's more concerned about protecting her image than actually making amends. Around this time, I heard from Emma and Josh, my step-siblings. They reached out after hearing about the letters, and for the first time, they seemed genuinely interested in understanding my side of things. They admitted they'd always been shielded from the worst of Lisa's behavior and apologized for not realizing how bad things were for me growing up. We decided to meet up and talk. The meeting was bittersweet. On one hand, it was nice to finally have an open conversation with them. They shared stories of their own struggles with Lisa's controlling tendencies, which helped me see that her behavior wasn't just directed at me, it was a pattern. But it also reminded me of all the years we lost because of her manipulation. While we aren't suddenly best friends, it feels like a step toward a better relationship. I updated Reddit again, sharing the latest developments. People encouraged me to focus on healing rather than seeking revenge or trying to expose Lisa further. My therapist echoed this advice, reminding me that holding on to anger only keeps me tied to the past. She suggested setting the letters aside for now and using them as a reminder of how far I've come. So that's what I'm doing. I've decided not to share the letters with the extended family, at least for now. They're a part of my story, but they don't have to define it. I'm choosing to focus on rebuilding my relationships with Emma and Josh, continuing therapy, and building the life I deserve. Lisa might still try to stir up trouble, but I'm done letting her control the narrative. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm the one writing my own story. Update 4. I thought things had finally calmed down after reconnecting with Emma and Josh. We'd agreed to focus on building a better relationship and let the past stay in the past. But Lisa had other plans. One morning, while I was at work, my coworker came into my office looking panicked. She said, "There's someone here asking for you, and she's causing a scene." My stomach dropped. I didn't need to ask who it was, I already knew. I stepped out into the lobby, and there she was, Lisa. She looked frazzled, her hair disheveled and her face tight with anger. As soon as she spotted me, she started loudly insisting we talk. She didn't care that my coworkers were standing around watching the whole thing unfold. Lisa claimed she just wanted to fix things between us. Her voice got louder as she demanded I give her closure and a chance to explain herself. It was embarrassing, to say the least. My manager was already stepping in, asking if we needed to call security. I held up my hand, signaling that I'd handle it. I told Lisa calmly but firmly that this was not the time or place and that she needed to leave. She refused, doubling down on how she was owed a chance to talk. I gave her one final warning. If she didn't leave, I'd have no choice but to involve security. That did the trick. She stormed out, mumbling something under her breath, but the damage was done. My coworkers were supportive, though. They told me I handled the situation well, and my manager reassured me that I had nothing to worry about. But Lisa wasn't done. That evening, she sent a barrage of texts. She claimed she was on the verge of losing her home, and that I was her last hope. She threw in phrases like, "If your father were here, he'd be so disappointed in you, and I can't believe you'd let this happen to me." It was guilt-tripping at its finest. I didn't reply. The next day, the extended family got involved again. Lisa had apparently gone to them after our workplace confrontation, spinning the story to make herself look like the victim. Some relatives called me, begging me to meet her just one more time. They said she was desperate and needed help. Others, thankfully, told me to stand my ground and reminded me of all the times Lisa had crossed the line before. I made it clear to everyone that I wasn't going to budge. I explained that Lisa's actions over the years went far beyond what anyone could excuse. I didn't owe her anything, and I wasn't going to give her the closure she was demanding, especially after she tried to ambush me at work. Then, Emma and Josh dropped a bombshell. They'd been digging into Lisa's finances, trying to figure out what was really going on. Turns out Lisa wasn't on the verge of losing her home, at least not because of poverty. She'd been gambling again, racking up massive debts, and using the "I'm about to lose my house" story to milk money from family members. They were furious. They told me they decided to cut her off financially and focus on setting boundaries with her moving forward. I updated Reddit with everything that had happened, the workplace confrontation, Lisa's lies, and the step-sibling alliance. The responses poured in. People commended me for staying calm under pressure and refusing to give in to her manipulation. Some even shared stories about their own family members pulling similar stunts, which reminded me just how common these situations can be. That weekend, I finally had some time to breathe. I spent it with friends, enjoying a quiet, drama-free few days. For the first time in what felt like ages, I realized how much lighter life could be without Lisa's shadow looming over everything. But of course, Lisa couldn't resist stirring the pot one last time. She made a dramatic Facebook post about how she was being abandoned by the people who were supposed to care about her. She painted herself as the perfect stepmother who had sacrificed everything, only to be betrayed in her time of need. My cousin, who has zero patience for her nonsense, quickly shut it down. She posted a detailed rebuttal, complete with screenshots of Lisa's manipulative texts and proof of her gambling debts. The post went viral within the family, and Lisa's pity party fell apart. At that point, I decided enough was enough. I blocked Lisa on every remaining platform. I told the family I wouldn't be discussing her anymore and asked them to respect my decision. Most of them understood. A few still tried to push the "but she's family" angle, but I didn't engage. Since then, things have been peaceful. I've made a lot of progress in therapy, focusing on building healthier relationships and letting go of the guilt Lisa tried to pile on me. I've realized that closure doesn't have to come from the other person, it can come from choosing to walk away. As for Lisa, I don't know what she's up to, and honestly, I don't care. This is the end of the road for me when it comes to her. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm truly free to move forward with my life, and that's exactly what I plan to do. Update 5. It's been a year since I last had contact with Lisa. After everything that happened, the ambush at my workplace, her lies about her financial situation, and the drama she stirred up on social media, I finally drew the line. Blocking her on every platform and stepping away from the chaos was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Now I can reflect on how far I've come since then. Therapy has been a huge part of this journey. After years of carrying anger and resentment, I've finally learned how to let go. My therapist helped me understand that holding onto that pain only gave Lisa more power over my life. Forgiveness, she explained, isn't about excusing someone's behavior, it's about freeing yourself from their control. So while I'll never reconcile with Lisa or let her back into my life, I've made peace with the past for my own sake. One unexpected outcome of all this has been my relationship with Emma and Josh. They've completely distanced themselves from Lisa, and we've started building a connection as adults. It's been eye-opening to hear their perspective on our childhood. They've shared stories of Lisa's controlling behavior toward them too, which has given us common ground. They've even started their own journeys in therapy to unpack the ways Lisa's actions shaped their lives. Reconnecting with them has been bittersweet, but ultimately rewarding. As for Lisa, I've heard bits and pieces about her through the family grapevine. A relative told me she's hit rock bottom. Her gambling addiction has worsened, and she's burned bridges with most of the extended family by constantly asking for money. Apparently, she's in danger of losing her house for real this time. While I don't wish her harm, I also don't feel any obligation to help. She's made her choices, and now she's dealing with the consequences. That said, I've realized that I don't need her to admit her wrongdoings or seek redemption anymore. Forgiveness without reconciliation has been a powerful lesson for me. It's about letting go of the need for closure from the other person and finding it within yourself. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm truly free of her shadow. I owe a lot of this progress to the Reddit community. The support, advice, and shared stories from strangers all over the world were a lifeline when I felt isolated and unsure. It's humbling to know that my story resonated with so many people, and I'm grateful to everyone who took the time to encourage me along the way. In the past year, I've also started focusing on creating a legacy that honors my father. Despite his flaws and mistakes, I believe he wanted the best for me. To honor his memory, I've started a small charity in his name. The charity helps kids from difficult family situations access counseling and mentorship programs. It's my way of turning something painful into something meaningful. On a more personal note, I've entered into a relationship for the first time in years. It's with someone who's kind, supportive, and understanding of my past. This relationship has been unlike anything I've experienced before, healthy and full of mutual respect. I credit therapy for helping me recognize what I deserve and how to communicate effectively. One of the most emotional moments of this past year was visiting my mom's grave for the first time in a decade. For so long, I avoided it because of the pain and anger I associated with losing her and the years of neglect that followed. But this time, it felt different. I brought flowers, sat by her headstone, and shared everything that's happened. It felt like closing a chapter while also keeping her memory alive in a way that felt peaceful. Reconnecting with extended family has been another bright spot. Over the years, Lisa's influence strained many of those relationships, but now that she's out of the picture, things are healing. I've had honest conversations with relatives who once took her side, and we've been able to rebuild trust. It's been a reminder that not all family bonds are irreparably broken. As for Lisa, there's been nothing but silence from her for months. I take it as a sign that she's finally moved on in her own way, or at least accepted that I won't be a part of her life anymore. Either way, it's not my problem to solve. I've spent enough of my life worrying about her actions and their impact on me. Now I focus on the small joys in life, spending time with friends, exploring hobbies, and planning for the future. It's not always dramatic or exciting, but it's mine, and that's what matters. Every day feels lighter without the weight of Lisa's manipulations hanging over me. Looking back, the biggest lesson I've learned is the importance of boundaries. Protecting your mental health isn't selfish, it's necessary. No matter how much society pressures us to keep the peace or put family first, it's okay to walk away from people who hurt you. So this is where my story ends. I'm closing this chapter with gratitude for the lessons, the growth, and the people who stood by me. Thank you to everyone who read, commented, and shared advice. Your support has been invaluable. Here's to a future defined not by my past, but by my choices.